Hello, listeners. It's Mallory Wilsey, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network, and I want to tell you about another show on our podcast network that I think you'll love. Visionary Voices, the College President's Playbook, is an insightful podcast dedicated to the strategic minds leading today's higher ed institutions. Each episode brings a unique perspective from visionary and tech-forward college presidents, chancellors, and other high-level academic leaders, diving into the complexities and nuances of running a modern educational institution. This show is hosted by Dr. Brian Gross, Vice President for Enrollment Management and Athletics at Hartwick College, and is a valuable resource for current and aspiring leaders in academia, offering a playbook of visionary ideas and practical solutions for the ever-evolving landscape of higher ed. New episodes drop every other Wednesday, and you can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search Visionary Voices wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello and welcome to Generation AI, the podcast where we demystify artificial intelligence in the world of higher education. I'm your host, Ardis Kadiu, joined by my co-host, Dr. JC Bonilla. Hey JC, how's it going today?
I'm doing good, Ardis, but I see a beautiful blue sky in your background, so I don't know if I'm as good as you are. Where are you calling from, my brother?
Yeah, this is spring break for the kids, so we're taking a few days and meeting up with some friends in Florida. So beautiful skies, and I'm inside recording with you. That's how much I like you, JC.
While in vacation, because recording artists may be having a daiquiri, or may not be having a drink on his hand. Who knows? Maybe just coffee.
It's breakfast, so maybe mimosas, for sure. Yes.
It's good to see you, my friend. And we had a really good week at work. Did you see these LinkedIn posts and announcements that came our way?
Yeah, of course. I mean, congratulations. So for those of the audience who don't know, JC, he's on the exec leadership at VaynerMedia. I mean, you can give a little bit of the background, but VaynerMedia has been in the news. It's one of the most famous agencies and one of the newer agencies that's winning a lot of awards and doing very interesting work. Top 10 A-list from Ad Age 2023.
So yeah, VaynerMedia, it's the largest privately held agency in the world. It's about 2,000 plus members, global footprint, the works, right? We work a lot with Fortune 1,000 companies. And yeah, it's ratifying that sometimes the industry, awards, it kind of makes you feel good. But the exciting thing, and also as an announcement to the upcoming Engage conference, the reason why Vayner continues to basically be recognized as the leader in the industry is because of the work that we cracked on social media. Not only, and the word actually says, not only we ruled social media in 2023, we actually rewrote the rule book, right? And there's been a lot of principles that move what creative is from subjectivity to objectivity, aka analytics and performance, some of the things that I've helped out. And it's been really rewarding to learn how to deploy a creative signature that is destined to win, but emerges from social media. Hopefully, for those of you attending Engage 2024 in June, I look forward to having the opportunity to talk about AI, of course, but all these important tidbits of what is making the difference in social media, and I would say codifying attention and relevance on the work. So thank you, Ardis. It's been fun. And for those of you who saw the animations, that's the C-suite and the bald guy. Everyone calls me generic JC because by the time the creator probably drew me, he was tired. So he just only gave me the little face dimple that I have. Everything else, it looks like, who's that guy without hair? It's like, I guess that's JC.
Yeah, I see that now. You're right in the middle top. Yeah, for sure.
Generic JC, that's the ongoing joke.
Well, congratulations, my friend. I think that's a huge accomplishment. And, sometimes like we work in academia quite a bit and we work in higher education, but a lot of the work that we do sometimes can be very forward thinking. And, as we kind of transition from higher to go to a bigger pond, so to speak, like usually we tend to thrive, right? So there's a lot of interesting work that's happening in higher education and ed tech in higher education. But then as you move outside, you're basically seeing that that work is so important and it's so transferable and sometimes lacking in some of these other larger institutions or companies.
This is a really good segue to anchor what we want to do today, right? Two ideas that Ardis and I want to share with all of you listening, right? Ardis and I have very similar paths, but we diverge and converge through our careers. So we start in academia. We're both engineers, technically trained. Sometimes it feels like we shared offices, right? And then Ardis leaves academia to start an agency, then pivots into software. So you're a technologist, right? I leave academia, right, to do technology, right? And then I've pivoted to support an agency. So our worlds have that diversion and convergence. And in the spirit of these conversations, one of the things that we've been doing here and there is that we do 5 episodes, a lot of updates, news, the technology is moving, but we always want to kind of slow it down and build something together, right? So today we're in building mode. And what I wanted to do is have a really intimate conversation with the agency, educational expert, but more importantly, technologist, Ardis. You built AI. And how I talk to my teams is that you bring the professional because you know what they know how to do? Fail. So I'm assuming that you've done 572 decisions to build this incredible AI infrastructure. And not all of them have been perfect decisions, obviously. But on average, you've made more better decisions. That's why you are where you are. So why is this relevant and how do we want to anchor it? I am going to go through the same transition in VaynerMedia, right? This A-lister agency that is being creative, it's winning. But guess what? Our AI infrastructure is not there. We talk the talk, we know the promise, and probably many of you are here. It's like, okay, I like what Ardis and JC are talking about. How do I bring it home? So in the next half hour or so, what I love to do is have a back and forth with Ardis, be a free consultant to the greater good Ardis, and let's provide a playbook that plugs all these things that we spoke in the past 15 episodes or so, but it leaves us with a roadmap. So executives, director of admissions, your institutional research, your enrollment analytics professional, whatever industry you're in. Oh, so these are the 3 or 4 next steps I need to do maybe in the year. How do I resource? And in, I guess, budget vibes, what is that I need to be asking and preparing so I can resource an AI capability? So how does that sound, Ardis?
Sounds great. Yeah, let's do it.
So the first question I asked my team this week was, hey, everybody, how do I load all this data, right? And then I have an engineering team. Maybe if you're a school, you have an SIS IT team, right? But these are the people that have the keys to the databases. And Ardis, what I'd like you to explain to people is these things that I heard. And you're really good at explaining these things. But what I heard is like, sure, what is the schema? And I told them, my friends, this is a schemaless environment. We need to vectorize our databases. And I told them, have you worked with, graph databases? And they literally looked at it like, is that an SQL thing? And I said, well, not quite. So Ardis, at the foundation of the work, a database, this is probably not looking like an Excel sheet that you pull or a table in PeopleSoft or your SIS that you query, right? We're talking about a totally different infrastructure. So what is the 101 of building the database so I can load things that are ML, AI, or LLM ready?
Yeah. So those are called vector databases. So when we look at data, there's 3 types of data. There is structured data. Those are your SQL databases where you have information that's well-defined. And a lot of our systems today, when we move data back and forth, our student information systems are like, they usually work around structured data. And you know exactly what the schema is, you know what the values are, so you know how they relate to each other. But then you go a little bit further and you're working with other systems and you don't know what that other system is going to send you. It might send you things in a certain way, so we use JSON or we use this kind of formats to send data back and forth. But at that time, they're semi-structured, right? Because you don't know exactly what you're getting. You might be getting 10 values or might be getting 100 values. So you know exactly what to call those things, but you don't know what you're getting inside those fields. So that's the halfway. And then we've kind of gone through and start thinking, okay, how do we work now with just raw text, right? Because we're taking transcripts like this one, and how do we combine a transcript from a podcast, or how do we combine a transcript from a video or meeting notes or this textual corpuses of information that are coming in, how do we create structured data out of them? How do we find what we need? How do we summarize? How do we pull insights out of this unstructured data? And large language models and AI has been, a really, really great way to do that. But you need to save them. You need to save this text because you need to be able to ask different questions of this large corpuses of text. And the best way to do that is encode them and save them in what's called a vector database. Essentially, you're transforming these corpuses of information. They can be both, audio, they can be text, they can be different representations into what's called a kind of a knowledge or semantic database. A semantic database is essentially how you transform information, text, video, audio, SQL, Python code. You basically take that, you run it through these models, and you transform it into the database. And it's essentially, again, it's this large vectors. Like what you see is it's a lot of numbers, right? Sometimes this can be very large, thousands of numbers to represent a chunk of text or less than that. And what that gives you, this vector or this semantic knowledge bases give you, is the ability to now retrieve that data in a meaningful way by having similarities. So you can give it a similar text and say, can you give me the items in this database or this store that are similar to this? So you can essentially ask questions and get text that means the same thing, or they can answer that type of question. Or you can give it a user input query and then pull in the SQL, or you can pull in other results that were very similar to that. So we have transformed from very structured to now going to databases that we don't know how these things are going to get queried. And those are our knowledge databases.
So Ardis, 100% fully tracking. And what I want to do in 2-3 minutes, in a way, it's give people a picture of everything that Ardis described. So the schema, when we speak about schema, right, in these tables, these databases, looks like GPAs, right? Looks like SATs, the numbers, the information that you're going to have. And we're making an assumption that all of us have that digitized, right? And maybe your IT team or your resourcing teams are going to tell you that's already on a data lake, in a data warehouse. You have that. So that's basically the starting conversation for today. So I'm going to have a schema that tells me that my students, my consumers, my clients, that their names, biodemographic information, each of them are things. What you're saying is that there's one more layer that we need to invest on that is going to grab these tables and create a new version of it. I'm going to call them a vectorized version that translates and remaps GPAs, 3.5, 2.2, 4.0 into a number. But does the same thing with age, first names, and text. The text of the essay, the personal statements, if I transcribe and digitize an interview, all that kind of stuff goes to that. So the question I have, if everyone is following, is, all right, so my IT team tells me I have a cloud service infrastructure, AWS, Google. So can I press the button there and then it does the vectorization? We are personally on a data lake that uses all these snowflake things that are padded with AWS, which is the Amazon infrastructure. So what are we asking? What are we going to go budget for so we can vectorize and start basically getting into this AI readiness capability? How do I vectorize?
Yeah, so there's two components to that. One of them is you need to store that somewhere.
That will be the data warehouse that a school has, or right?
Exactly. So some of these databases or some of these products like Snowflake or MongoDB have come up with saying, oh, you can now store vector data in our database, so you don't have to use another tool. For us, we use a different tool. We actually use two. We use MongoDB, which is our main data store. It has a way to store database as a vector. And then we also use another tool called Weaviate, which is built from the ground up. It's an open source product that essentially was born for storing vector databases. So we use both of those two products. And that's the storage part. But then you need the models. How do you take a piece of information or a text and convert it to a vector? And you have very specialized models for that. Like we use a combination of models from OpenAI. That's the ADA models that are called embeddings, right? So these vectors they're transformed into something called embeddings, and that's what we store. We store those embeddings, which are vectors of numbers, and we convert our text, we pass it through the model. The model gives us back all of the embeddings, and then we store those embeddings in the database. And we have to do this over and over again. So that's kind of the transformation that happens.
So we assume that you have a data warehouse where you basically have all these details. Chances are that your infrastructure already has a button or a feature that would vectorize the schema stuff. However, when you're looking at text, essays, things that you transcribe, this is where you need to go and re-listen our 15 chapters on different type of LLMs. OpenAI would be one of them, because you're going to have to throw additional modeling, additional computational power, AI, to do vectorization on text.
Well, most of them you'll have to do that. So for every piece of information, you need a model that transforms that information into what's called like I said, an embedding.
Okay, so resourcing vibes, everybody, as you start thinking about it, you need to make a commitment of what type of LLM or AI technology you're going to bring into house. So when they say your data warehousing partner is Google,
you'd use the Gemini embeddings. So Google,
correct.
Google Vertex, I think their Vertex APIs, that's what they're calling their AI stack. It has embeddings in there. So some of these cloud providers, they have wrapped, the database, and they have wrapped the embedding process all together. And they might be calling it a knowledge base. So you can just give it the corpus of text. And then behind the scenes, they're doing the embeddings transformation, and they're storing it for you. And they're giving you, hey, here's now how you can query this data. So depending on where you are, if you're in Google, Microsoft, or with Azure or AWS, they have very similar kind of products.
And then once that happens, these vectorized databases, they use similarity matching. So I want to paint that picture and then bring the context of the 2-3 episodes we've had in the past. So number one, what is the similarity matching thing? So when we think about a query, think about you're a head of a department and you ask for a report. Give me every student that is a female and he has paid the deposit. So what is happening in query language is that select the table that has the deposit, filter by students, gender equals to female, and look for that milestone or funnel stage called deposit, give the results, and then count them. Literally, that is what happens in schema land. When you look at similarity matching, the opportunity here is that the query looks like this. Tell me everything you know about female students. And then it says 2 of them have deposited, but 55 of them live in Australia, and 2 of them are actually arriving in the upcoming event today. Like, that is the potential that you break the boundaries of how the information that you ask is what you get to AI generative answers, if you will, right? So, Ardis, is that fair kind of hyperbole of what similarity matching does when it comes to querying? Anything for you to build there?
Yeah, you essentially can ask very different questions. So the things that were very hard for us to ask before, things like, okay, a student is providing a piece of text, they're providing an essay, or they're providing a narrative type of information. You're looking at a transcript, which has a lot of different components in there. So you can ask questions like, tell me what's the theme of this year's class based on their essays, because you're writing a speech, let's say, and you can actually ask that question because now, semantically, you'll look for, hey, what are the themes here? And it'll pull those pieces of text. And of course, you'll have to pass them on to your chatbot or large language model in order to pull that. So the storing part is just one, but the types of questions that you can ask are very different now with these types of databases.
Great, which is a segue to what I want to ask you next. In prior episodes, you spoke about RAG, how it allows us basically to create this interconnectivity that it will connect the essays to events and, the weather. You spoke about agents, which is basically how we trained our AI to then do models and then give me sentiment analysis. So I'll not only summarize the theme, but tells me, is this a good theme or a bad theme, right? Also, like, get polarity, or you're able to do trend lines. Like, you start training. So as a capability, I need to figure out my basically data warehousing. How do I vectorize? I need to make the commitment to an LLM to do that. What happens to all these things, RAGs and agents and the context window that allow these things to be amazing or not? Is that also part of the LLM? Do I just need to hire some new person? How do I start thinking of that? Because my team is going to ask me, how do I do RAG? And I don't know. So what's your advice on those things? Do I need to just select 3 use cases, 5 use cases? call them agents and then ask the team to train against? Or I just avoid that on my first year? How do you advise us to start thinking about that investment?
So we're going into development mode now.
Well, I don't know. That's a really good question. Once I vectorize, is this the next step? Do I start thinking about RAG, or what do you think is the next step?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about the nuts and bolts right now of these systems, right? And, as a product developer, I'm like, okay, you know what? Like, you should start thinking a little bit higher level, right? Because there's going to be the productization of these things. They're going to be commoditized. They're going to be coming out of the box. Like I said, Google, for example, or even AWS or Microsoft, like they have the service that are essentially doing that for you in the background. You throw it some data and it builds what they call these knowledge bases. And that's what we talked about before too. So these are knowledge bases, and that's how institutions and how organizations should think about it. I have all of my knowledge that I need, and I need to retrieve it at any point, and I need to ask questions against it. So what you're asking is, okay, it's saved in there in that knowledge base, but then how do you ask questions against it?
Yeah, the conversation. Did I jump one step? Because what I am putting tension on is we have the data AI ready.
AI ready, correct. Yes.
But then now, give me that query. What have you learned about all the women? What's the theme of the year based on essays? How do I do that? What is the next step or the interim steps?
Yeah. So the next step then would be to essentially use one of the chatbot or AI frameworks to come up with an interface. So you're going to have a chat interface. And what's really interesting is that some products, essentially, they give you like a blank white label type chatbots where they say, point us to a database or knowledge base. And we're going to give you the process of how do you do the RAG? How do you pull things from the database into the context and then send that context to the large language model and then bring that answer back to the user through a chat interface. So you can start building that on your own, but most likely you're going to buy a product or you're going to use one of the white label layers that Google provides you or AWS provides you to do that conversational bot. There's also, if you're using OpenAI, they have come up with this AI assistance API. So you can essentially use their AI assistance API, and they're saying we're going to abstract away the process of doing the RAG and the storing and the vectorization part. So we're just going to give you the API so you can now plug that into your front-end interface yourself. Hey everyone, Ardis here, founder and CEO of Element 451. I'm thrilled to invite you to the Engage Summit in Raleigh, June 25th and 26th. It's our annual gathering where AI and higher education come together in exciting ways. A lot of the sessions will focus on cutting-edge AI that are reshaping student experience, they're enhancing staff productivity, and offering deep insights into your data. Imagine 2 days filled with hands-on sessions, real success stories, and the chance to network with top minds in the field. You live with practical, transformative takeaways as you learn how AI can foster a more personalized, efficient approach from recruiting to student success and even to alumni engagement. Oh, and the best part? The Engage Summit is incredibly affordable. Try discount code Enrollify50, that's Enrollify50, and you can register for just $99. So join me and many of my fellow Enrollify Network creators at Engage Summit this coming June. Learn more and register at engage.element451.com. We can't wait to see you there. One other one that's an interesting, Zapier introduced a generalized, they called it Zapier Central, which is this really, really nice way for them to have this AI bots that can connect to these data sources, right? But they do the conversational interfaces and then you can do actions on them as well. So there's a lot of companies who are building the infrastructure so you can communicate with your data in that way. And some of them are building more streamlined, everything in a box type of approach. And some of them are giving you the different components. My recommendation is find something that you can dump your data into and you're not building the mechanics of these AI assistants. Like you're essentially defining the behavior, how they work, rather than building the mechanics.
So back in, I think, when was it that I installed AY, Apply Yourself? It's like, I don't know, 2005, right? No. So back then, it's a very similar tension, right? It's like you have a paper-based application system and now you're going to digitize. And it feels like you step 3 steps, right? So the digital evolution or transformation was paper. And then also I get this system that digitizes the record. It stores the things, but gives me the interface. So I have the database, data warehousing technology. I'm investing on an LLM. When I select the LLM, are you telling everybody, select an LLM that gives you the interface or be agnostic?
So we're talking about, a company here. So it's not the LLM that's giving you the interface, it's the company. So OpenAI has an API that's providing that for you, the AI Assistance API. They're still using GPT-3 or you can still use GPT-4 in the background, but the interface. Now, if you want to do this, let's say we go back to Google or we go back to AWS, they also have APIs. They also have an interface that give you exactly the same thing. They're calling it something different. They're calling it whatever it is, right? However, if you want to, do it yourself, there is some amazing open source libraries. We use them ourselves as well that let you build these products. And one of them is called LangChain, right? LangChain is a open source product. It's both Python and TypeScript. And you can use it in Python to essentially chain together all of these AI assistants and AI models. And it has components that you can go to a database and do the RAG. You can do chain of thought. You can do a lot of different things, but they give you the building blocks now.
It's kind of like AI orchestration.
Yes, similar. Yes. So LangChain is the framework that you use a lot. There is another one called Llama Index. Now we're getting very geeky, JC. So this is, we're getting very geeky in terms of tooling.
Everybody, this podcast, you should give to your technical folk. Ardis is giving you the playbook. I'm just asking the questions. This is the playbook of an infrastructure rollout and really, really distributed. So this is worth a lot of money.
Yeah. So the playbook is, again, very simple. Like you have your data, you got to transform it into this knowledge bases. You would use a cloud infrastructure. If you don't want to use Google or AWS, like I said, there is open source, libraries or open source databases like Weaviate for vector databases. And then you use the large language models through OpenAI or Anthropic or even Cohere or Google for that matter as well. And then you use these open source libraries like LangChain or Llama Index that abstract away all of the knowledge that you need to do these things manually, to call all these APIs, to do all the orchestration yourself. Essentially, they're wrappers around and it can alleviate a lot of that work for you. So highly recommend that you take a look at them. We're using them internally, but obviously we're extending quite a bit of them, but they're kind of your toolbox. If you're a developer, if you're building any kind of, I would say, AI tool today, you're probably using these libraries.
Okay. So very, very interesting. And everybody, this is supposed to be a playbook of the infrastructure to get you AI ready, right? So I want to switch the conversation to the people who do this, right? Because one is the investment of models, infrastructure, databases that do this, but who conducts this? And I want to anchor this with a reality that I think translates to our friends in higher education. I'm going to paint the picture of where I work, my 9 to 5. I represent a sector that spends billions of dollars with a B, where the technology, it's really advanced. And I had a conversation with my engineers and they just literally didn't know what I was talking about. When I said vector databases, they're experts on schema. It's like 1990 things there, but they're the experts. They're the best. They can write the books there. And all of a sudden, what Ardis just painted and kind of gave us a summary, for many of them, it's going to be a new thing. So translate into higher education, your IT department knows how to do it, but maybe have not done this. So Ardis, as I paint this picture that I'm assuming the reality of many people listening to this is mine, that they have technical people, they just never done it. What can we say about the transformation of an engineer? How did Ardis, the SQL dude who knew relational databases, does the leap into AI? It's like, oh, yeah, I get this, right? I can vectorize. There's going to be fear. There's going to be all these things like, do I have the right people? Because I'm going to put in X number of dollars to bring the infrastructure. Do I now have the people? So what is the first thing that you tell a technical person? What happens in that one-on-one of implementing this technology? Knowing that you are technical, but you've never done this type of rollout.
Yeah, I go back to starting to ask myself, is this core competency for me? Like, is this something that, we differentiate on? Like, do I need to do this myself? And like, as a leader, that's the first thing that I would ask as in adopting technology, right?
Ooh, I like that.
So if I don't need to do it ourselves, it's not our core competency, then I would say, okay, can I find someone who can do this better than us? And so I don't have to spend resources internally to do it. Build versus buy, right? If it's a core competency, you build, and you're differentiating on technology, then you build. If it's not a core competency, you're basically farming that out and saying, okay, as long as I have people internally who understand and who are AI literate, so AI literacy becomes really important rather than the technical know-how on implementing these tools. Because if you're AI literate and you know all the different pieces that go into it, then you can have a meaningful conversation with somebody externally and you can say, hey, these are the pieces that I need. How does your structure work? How does it fit into my types of data and knowledge bases? But you don't have to build it yourself.
Ardis, let me just build off of that and then connect your last thought there. What you just said is so important. As a leader, there's two things that you're saying that are really, really important. As a leader, you're making the moves to bring this AI-ready infrastructure. You're going to put in your neck on the line to actually get the resources, right? But you need the people. And we're saying that the people may be in your campus or in a different institution, and you're bringing them an opportunity. And it's up to the team now to realize the opportunities ahead. And number one, AI is probably one of the hottest fields, not the hottest field right now, so the opportunity is immense. So you have to have this hunger for growing and evolving. Second thing I want to bring is that all of us have seen, I'm going to use the word technical dinosaurs. People who just basically, they do the work, they press the buttons, but they have no interest in evolving. I can think of so many. And that's the distinction. My team is incredibly hungry. So when I say, guys, we're going to do this, they don't know how to do it. It's just the opportunity is ahead. Let's going to hack it and learn it, right? Make the assessment that the people that you have, that you're going to team up with, do they have that hunger? As Ardis said, are they AI ready in terms of knowledge? That doesn't mean that they have done it before. And if yes, you have the right team. Else, to Ardis's last point, go and buy the team. So in your investment, you're going to have to get the infrastructure and probably a consultant or a third party that would teach. But you need to make the assessment and only you know where your technical capabilities are. Is that fair, Ardis?
I think that's very fair, yeah.
I'm telling you, everybody, this is a really interesting podcast and a playbook. I'm getting so much. Ardis, so now the team makes a commitment. We went to our bosses. We got the money. We assess that the team is hungry, so we don't need a consultant. We can do it internally. What is the first thing you tell a team to try? What do you think is the best thing that you would tell a team? Go ahead and build that, and everyone wait because this is an important first new step. What is it?
Yeah, I would say the POC, the proof of concept. You need to have a proof of concept ready. So you need to make sure that this thing actually works without investing a lot more, work into it. So the proof of concept is usually around slicing or proving that something can be done. For example, when we're as engineers, and as we're writing code or writing something, like we just want that output to be there. And then we go back to optimize it, to make it scalable, to do all the pieces. So if we get something and then we start building on it. So the proof of concept should be very narrowly defined, that you need to get a particular output on it. And you need to be able to, figure out this very small use case that you have to start building that. And then once you have that, then go from there and start exploring more or start building on top of it.
Can you think of one or two use cases that you would recommend a higher education institution? I'm going to give you the agency ones, or the one that I'm thinking about for our company. What would be the good articulation of a POC that follows that criteria, that is narrow, that allows you to win or fail fast, those type of things? So,
it depends on what the use cases are that you like, where you're deploying this, right? Because there can be a million different use cases of taking existing workflows and putting them in there. One of them from, let's say, an admissions perspective or enrollment perspective is if you have essays coming in, if you want to digitize your evaluation of these essays, then you would put all this text information in a database and then start putting a rubric together to evaluate them. That's on the admission side. Now, if you're working with faculty members or if faculty is trying to do this themselves or with a group and they're trying to put a product together that's like, okay, we're going to run all of these corpuses of text and start evaluating them through a rubric or summarizing them. I would say those are the first two use cases that can be very easily done through a POC. You don't really need a lot of conversational stuff because usually those are one shot, meaning you send the information to a large language model and then you get something back, right? So summarization is a really good use case for that. Finding things that are like knowledge bases, like Q&A, that's another one. So institutional knowledge. So if you're in IT and you have a library of all your past tickets that came in, now you can vectorize all those tickets and then you can put a little interface on top of it. So the first line defense person from the help desk who's taking that call, they can just search really quickly and say, computer died, with this error. And then you'll bring up all of the prior cases that had that. So that's a use case for that. You can also do it for admissions. You can go back to the admissions with the knowledge bases and you can say, hey, we have 150 programs and each one of those have different requirements, right? So rather than doing a text search, you can do something which is very interesting where you can take all of the class descriptions for each one of the classes and put them in that vector database. And then the student comes in and they say, hey, I'm interested in gaming, or I'm interested in, media literacy, like whatever they might be interested in. You can very quickly take that, bring in all the text from the database, all the courses that kind of relate to it. And that's a semantic search database that we're talking about. So that's another use case for it. So those are two very, very fast use cases.
Love it. And the ingredients of those use cases, before I give mine, if you heard from Ardis, there's narrow. Either they're solving a problem that no one has solved. So it's basically solving a gap. Or number two, they're automating a repeatable process, right? And three, there's a clear audience and stakeholder who this is for. They're not generic on this is for everybody. It's like he was narrow on admissions or their person in the front desk answering questions. The one that I'm looking at Vayner for, it's really interesting and it's narrow. It's for about 200 strategists that it's on the first camp of there's a gap in knowledge. We just don't know, right? So think about marketing performance. We do thousands of campaigns and we have the performance. And you can query, what was the performance of this campaign, right? But in admissions, right? And when you do marketing, sometimes the campaigns use this idea of what's called a persona. We call them cohorts. They're very narrow, right? So it's not an audience segmentation like women 45. It sounds like entrepreneur women into technology and tacos. Like, you know what I mean? Cohorts have these nuance. They're creative articulations. So all these labels, right, are unstructured. So what I like to do is ingest all that, the performance of the campaigns, and start interrogating what have we learned about women? Because there are articulations of women, woman, alpha, female, whatever creative words define a gender, and then just basically the learning. Because today our strategy team is in a way with blind spots of what have we done retrospectively and how we know our segments, women, men, children, Gen Zers, and things of that sort. So it's a really simple use case and it's about knowing what we've done and how the work has led and influenced these type of consumers.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So social media listening is huge. This is where generative AI can be very powerful and these databases can be very powerful because you can marry the text and comments and all of this. Like you have the campaign, you have all the metadata around that campaign that's internal to you, like what you did. You have all the comments and all of the text. You can synthesize all of that text down now to basically themes or rubrics that you have built internally, evaluation, and then you build an internal knowledge of what's working and what's not working. Like the external world doesn't know what your goals were. So that's data that's private to you, right? So now you're building an internal knowledge base of insights that you can go back and say, hey, give me the word cloud or give me the themes that resonated with these people based on the comments. And then now when you go back, you're like, oh, shit, I can't use that theme because
it didn't work in the past, right?
It didn't work, right? Exactly. That's interesting.
Or double down on this because it worked before, right? These are the 5 things that work for an audience that look like XYZ, right? In Ardis, to your point, and everybody kind of bringing it back onto summary mode so we can wrap up. all these details, the data, the performance, the comments, the campaigns, the cohorts are digitized in our data warehouse in their schema, and we need to then vectorize. We need to make the investment, and as an agency, we need to come and say we're going to be an OpenAI shop or an X shop, right? Whatever that means. Then once we have the capability, I am going to make sure that in the selection of the technology, right, we go with the one that supports the UI or the interface, so we don't need to buy additional technologies. And then I've looked at my engineering team. They're the best. They're hungry. They want to learn this. So I'm going to give them the project. And it's the one use case. Put it in 2 months. Let's build it. And don't build anything else until we can basically say, hey, strategist, can you come and create these patterns, right? And if the answer is yes, I'll come back to you and I'll ask you for the 201 of AI readiness. Fair?
Sounds good. Yeah. Hopefully this was useful for everybody. I know that we went a little bit deeper on this one.
Ardis, the last question is for you. Is there anything I'm not asking you that you think is important as it relates to AI readiness 101?
Yeah, I mean, this is AI readiness as an organization in terms of building products and building AI, tooling and capabilities. One of the things that you're not asking me is around data and security. Like, that's a big one that we get asked quite a bit. I don't think we have enough time in this podcast. We probably need to do another podcast.
We will do a follow-up on that. Absolutely. Look, I forgot how my IT team or legal team is going to put a stop on the project, because what about legal compliance with our 17,000 stakeholders?
Exactly. And the AI bias that you're bringing into your data sets. So,
ay, Dios mío. Everybody, let's leave it up to here. Ardis, go back to daiquiris, mimosas, or I don't know, just reading a good book on the beach. It's good to see you, my friend. Everybody, subscribe, drop comments. I hope that this content is speaking to you. And as always, thank you so much for paying attention to our thoughts and ideas around AI. Ardis.
Thanks, everybody. Until next time. Generation AI is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you're going to like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing weekly, and we've got a wide range of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed leaders and professionals like you find their next big idea. They feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts, like Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Jenny Lee Fowler, Brian Gross, and many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform that's helping institutions all over the country create meaningful, personalized, and engaging connections with their prospects and students. Learn more at element451.com.